Good morning to you from the Gold Coast. It is 10 a.m. and it is 29 degrees Celsius. I feel like I moved back to North Queensland with a humidity of 80%, and I'll stop complaining about the weather right now. So the review of the day is for Hook, the Virility Gene by Tully Zetford. And look at that cover. It's survived its decades of existence not too badly. It was doing a lot better before it lived in my backpack for 3 days, I've got to tell you that. It is so naff. I mean, that sprayed on blue, green, teal perhaps suit. This guy is meant to be a stunningly and dynamic, attractive to every woman type guy, and they've made him look slightly like a wizened yellow chimpanzee. That was a peculiar choice. Anyway, the cover matches the content. I've got to tell you that. It's pretty naff. So, I don't know if I've mentioned before how I came to accidentally buy 4 books by Tully Zetford. Brief mention of that. I was in my favourite bookshop in Brisbane, which is Archives. It's in an old church. It is gorgeous. It is a second-hand bookshopper's delight. And I didn't have long. I had, I think, 6 minutes on the meter, and I was running. I just dashed in to check if there was anything from Jack Vance or Roger Zelazny that I didn't already have. And right down in the far corner, at the bottom, where it's dimmest and darkest, I saw not 1, but 4 Zelaznys that not only had I never read, I had never heard of them. I was in hog heaven. It's like, oh my God, 4 Hiroto unknown Zelaznys. And I grabbed them off the shelf, rushed up the register, and flourished my credit card at the cashier before I could think twice and before the meter ran out. It's right next to the cop shop too. So, not a good place for your meter to run out. When I got them home, of course, I found out they were by an author I had never heard of called Tully Zetford. I mean, with a name like that, you've got to have serious doubts about whether it's a real name or not, and it turns out it isn't. Tully Zetford is one of the many, many pseudonyms that were used by author Kenneth Bulmer, who started writing in the 20s. He was a British writer. He primarily wrote science fiction. He wrote over 160 novels, numerous short stories. He wrote under a lot of pseudonyms, and sometimes he got so into his pseudonym that he actually invented a whole background for the pseudonym character that he was pretending to be. He sounds like a bit of a card. He looks like it too. Now, when I picked up the very first, which was Whirlpool of Stars, incidentally, this imagery of the galaxy and the stars being a whirlpool continues throughout, and I quite like that imagery. Within a few pages, like I'm talking less than pages, I'm going, what is this? This reads like E.C. Tubb's famous Earl Dumerest saga, Winds of Gath. I adore E.C. Tubb. I read him regularly. I've read as many of the Earl Dumerest sagas that I can get my hands on. They're pulpy, they're formulaic, but they are amazingly addictive. And it was clear to me that there was some crossover. I invented all sorts of things in my head. Did E.C. Tubb write under the pseudonym Tully Zetford himself? Had he discovered that he wanted to side project to Dumerest? Because the main character here, Hook Rider, is like a budget Earl Dumerest. I don't find him as good a character. That might be my early love of Earl Dumerest, and whereas Hook Rider Hook just never... I can't say he's not as good a character, and I can't say he isn't as well fleshed out, because Earl Dumerest is a cardboard cutout for all intents and purposes, but he's a really, really good cardboard cutout. Whereas this ain't it. If you watch that wonderful lady who reviews costumes, this ain't it. So this is the 4th in the series, and I've finished it. I'm glad that I finished all 4. I set myself to do it having bought them, and they weren't that cheap really. They're obviously a very niche genre. I think they've mostly faded out of the public eye. I looked them up, the Hook series up on Goodreads. Goodreads insists that there's only 4. Now, if you go elsewhere, Wikipedia, who is my friend, you find that there's a lot more of them listed. Yes, it looks like, according to Wikipedia, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. There should be at least 11 of them. I can't see myself seeking them out. Well, like I said, Earl Dumerest is formulaic. This is exceptionally formulaic, and it doesn't really have a lot to make up for the things that are lacking in this type of formula. You've got your leading man who's incredibly, incredible, and you either like it or you don't. These are going to have a very niche readership, and it's going to be people who like classic, old school, very pulpy sci-fi, and that's all it is. Now, the one thing that I did really love about Hook, the Virility Gene, I'll get to that later, is that chapter 1, on the opposing page, there's a little dedication there, which you probably can't see too well on YouTube. It's dedicated to Earl Dumerest and the astrogator of his travels, E.C. Tubb. May Tainor Dumerest never be doomed to rest. And, oh my God, my heart fluttered. Everything that I had suspected was confirmed by this. It's like, this is obviously aimed at E.C. Tubb and his Earl Dumerest saga, or Dumerest of Terror, I think they call it in America. Was it rivalry? Was it tribute? Was it someone failed in a bet? What was it? I don't know what it was. One day maybe I'll find out. I think it's beyond my investigative skills, but I'm really curious. So in this, the last one, it continues on Hook's adventure from number 3, in which he's saved from the boosted men and escapes the only 2 friends in the universe who he thinks of as friends. Loyalty is a single-minded gemstone. There aren't enough in the entire galaxy to make a bracelet. Blah, 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 blah. It's pulpy goodness. Very pulpy. So he's on a spaceship with these 2, and they uncover a plot. They're not really interested in the plot. They basically want to get where they're going and continue on their way. But they get embroiled in it kind of against their will. There's this belief, this incredibly expensive virility drug. What's it called? Gene. Virility Gene, I think is what they call it. And someone's selling maps to get to it, and Ryder Hook, of course, is way too smart to fall for that, but he gets embroiled in it anyway. He gets chucked out of an airlock with a member of another species, and they eventually survive, but he gets separated from his friends, and in order to find them again, he goes off to the planet Shyla, whatever, with this other person, Virility Gene. It's not a gene. And that's one of the things about this book. It's like, Virility Gene implies to me gene, as in genetics. Here it seems to be a substance in liquid form, which, yes, it imparts virility and strength and long-lastingness in the sex act and a whole heap of other things. But it isn't a gene. And all the way through the Hooks series, you get these things where you go, well, it doesn't really add up, or that description is really odd. It's like he's invented his own swear words and his expletives and a whole heap of other things. And most of them are at best dated, and some of them just really aren't that great. But for its era and what it is, you can appreciate it. I can tell that it's really rare by the fact that on Goodreads only 4 books are mentioned. Of all those 4, the one with the most ratings is 5 reviews. And yeah, they've just gone seriously out of fashion and out of ken. But there's a lot of people these days, many of them younger, so discovering it for the first time, who are right into that pulp, classic sci-fi, or space opera, I suppose you'd call that these days. Give Tully Zetford and his Rider Hook series a chance, because they are so very much what they are. It's kind of impressive. Now, one thing about the universe building that he has here that I do like, I don't think it's exceptionally well done, but it's instrumental to all the books and all the plots, is that he foresees a future where econorgs, as he calls them, kind of rule almost all of the population. So an econorg is basically a company. It is a company to which, where you keep your money, but also your assets, and you kind of belong to it. You get implants in your skin, which can be scanned at any time, and all your assets are through that, but you belong to the econog. People who don't have embedded credit cards, as he called them, are outcasts and loners, and they're rare. They rely on metal money, which is in short supply in the universe. There's never that much of it. Hawk Rider, as a kind of hunted man, is of course not a member of any econorg, though he pretends every now and then, and that makes him an automatic outsider. I really liked the way Bulmer / Zetford presents these econorgs, and the way almost all of the population of the galaxy is a slave or part of one or the other. I like the power that confers within the social structure, and I think he did it very well. In actual fact, the one thing that it reminds me most of is Jennifer Government by Max Barry, where in that universe a person's surname is the company they work for, because the sense of ownership by the company for whom you work is real. So Jennifer works for the government, hence Jennifer Government. We find out that a lot of people are named McDonald's, not because it's a hereditary name, nor because they're Scottish, but because their parents work for McDonald's. McDonald's has whole schools, whole hospitals, a whole eco-organisation, or econorg, as Tully Zetford would have it. I really like that element of character building, world building. In terms of character building, I like the fact that he gives us a reason why Rider Hook is such a Superman. Tubb Dumerest is a bit of a Superman, and we never really get huge reasoning behind it. But Hook was part of a government program where trying to make boosted men, and he was boosted in many aspects, but then thrown out of the program. So the actual boosted men are now hunting him, maybe. Now, I'm not sure about that, because it feels a lot as if Rider Hook is hunting the boosted men, and the boosted men, while they know about him, don't really care an awful lot. So this might be Hook's obsession rather than theirs. I'm not sure. So yeah, basically this is a screensaver for the brain. It is pulpy, it is predictable. I like the explanation for Hook's excessive powers, where I don't like Hook. I find him a vessel for the story, and as such adequate, but not particularly interesting or innovative. His complete and utter control and power and knowledge of everything gets a bit tedious, and I feel in comparison to Tubb Dumerest, where you have more actual humanity in the man, and his goal of finding Earth again in the future is a more realistic goal and creates a character for him, whereas with Hook we never really get much of a character. I do like the fact that in this book there's an entire hermaphrodite set, where the pronouns are vi, they, vis, which I've got to say I think is a bit better than they, them. I like the fact that Bulmer was trying to normalize more than two single straightforward genders. I don't like how much he enjoys his own enjoyment, though. At times it can be a bit creepy, but you know, pulp, right? Yeah, we got that. Another thing that's very, very analogous and finally tipped me in the very first book to going, yeah, this is EC Tubb, is the fact that in the Hook universe you've got hard travel, where Tubb Dumerest has travel low or travel high. If you travel low, you're frozen and your chances of surviving aren't great. Here, hard travel, again, you're frozen. And it's a physically hard way to travel. It's cheap, so lots of people do it. Many of them don't make it through to the other end. I like this way of creating a hard, cruel, diverse galaxy that doesn't care about you and how you're doing. But all the credit to that goes to E.C. Tubb, who I'm 99% certain did it first. Okay, so the thing about both of these series is, aside from the pulp, aside from the complete godlike main hero, here a bit more than there on that one, you've got some beautiful covers of their era. And look, of the two, if this sounds interesting and you want to read something like this, I would go E.C. Tubb every time. Because really, there's probably a reason this has faded into less recognition. Kenneth Bulmer himself, I think I've read a book by Bulmer that was actually under his own name. And he was prolific. He did a lot of comics, he did editing, he did huge amounts of stuff. I'd like to have more people read the Hook series. I would like to be able to discuss them. The end of this one, okay, it's a bit of a spoiler. So Hook Rider wants, but I'm going to do it anyway. Hook Rider is out to destroy all the boosted men because they're creating a society of Nova men, and they're all cold and uncaring and don't care about humanity. So he wants to kill them all off. And then he discovers that he always knows when they're around, because when he's near one, something about their emanations or something mean that he becomes a fully boosted man, which includes the ability to move incredibly fast through the world, do feats that normal people can't do. So at the end, he's discovered the source of this liquid gene. I don't think we go into that very much further, which is a shame, because that was actually more interesting than Rider Hook's little experience. To his horror, he discovers that the one boosted man who boosts him more than anyone else that he's ever met is actually a woman. He's standing in front of her, he has a gun, he can't shoot her. I can see that this is probably the start of a whole different strand, number 4 being the gateway to a whole different part of the Hook universe. Even with that Hook, if you'll pardon the pun, to Hook moving on to a new part of his experience, I'm not wild about it. I won't go out of my way. If I ever come across the other ones, maybe I'll read them. Yeah, I could say a lot more about it. I won't. Thank you for watching. If you have actually read Tully Zetford, do please let me know, because I'm starting to suspect that there's about 7 people in the whole universe who have. Otherwise, do the things the algorithm likes and go away and read a wonderful book.